Larchill is the last surviving example in Europe of the 18th century ferme ornée, or ornamental farm, an enchanting element of the picturesque movement, which sought to recreate in buildings and landscape the idyllic vision of nature depicted by the great romantic painters such as Claude and Poussin. The realisation of the picturesque movement through the luscious landscapes of Ireland and England was unique throughout the world. And as with art, so too in life. A building should embellish and embolden the scene. Larchill is Arcadia, with a wealth of rustic follies setting off the natural charms of the parkland and gardens that surround the farmhouse. The poet Alexander Pope summed it all up. To build, to plant, whatever you intend, to rear the column or the arch to bend, to swell the terrace or sink the grot, in all let nature never be forgot. The first follies were built here in the middle of the 18th century by the Prentice family, who were well-to-do farmers and haberdashers from Dublin. One of their triumphs was the Cockleshell Tower, rising out of the end of the garden wall. This little room, embedded and embellished with shells, lit by stained glass windows, is typical of the frenzied fashion for this decorative art that flourished during the 18th century. According to one of its main exponents, the beauties of shells are as infinite as of flowers. Upstairs, too, there are abundant shells. It was a type of decoration employed by great swathes of society, dukes, poets and aesthetes galore, throughout England and Ireland in the 18th century. Lord Donegal, for example, bought £10,000 worth of shells in 1788 for his fancy notions. This is an excellent example of a folly. A foolish monument to greatness and a great monument to foolishness, buildings both useful and useless, giving venerable beauty, romance and antiquity to the landscape, as well, of course, as immeasurable pleasure to us all. One of the jewels in the crown of follies the world over is the Fox's Earth at Larchill, built in the early 1800s by Robert Watson, master of the local foxhounds. Stricken with terror of retribution for having killed so many foxes, he was convinced that he would be reincarnated as a fox, and so built this temple-topped Fox's Earth as a bolt hole. Rustic classicism and Gothicry ensured the most elegant of other lives. In the past few years, Larchill has undergone a miraculous restoration. Since the middle of the last century, it had descended into the saddest state of decay. But now its fortunes have triumphantly turned, thanks to its new owners, the de las Casas family. Look, for example, at the glories of Gibraltar, a fort where mock battles raged for children and for adults. Until recently, an overgrown ruin on a dried-up lake. Now the water is back and the fort restored, entirely with 18th century building methods. The fort, as with many of the follies here, is a modest copy of the grandiose structures built on the neighbouring estate of Dangan Castle, where the Duke of Wellington was born and brought up. Dangan too had an island called Gibraltar, where the young Wellington fought frenziedly against family, friend and foe, even leading a miniature man-of-war into battle. Flags were raised and cannons fired, just as they would have been here at Larchill. But Dangan's delights were doomed. Now all traces of these oddities have vanished. Now Dannon Castle has rotted, but not so Larchill. On we row to a temple rearing up on an island surrounded by a circle of what look like gun holes for further skirmishes. Astonishingly, at the core of the temple, there is a plunge pool filled with icy rainwater. This is indeed a picturesque parallel. Rare and exotic farm animals flourishing alongside rare and exotic buildings. Sheep and cattle graze in sylvan glades, while the pigs, wonder of wonders, reside in castles newly built for their comfort and joy. Hello, porkers. Oh, to inhale the air of this castellated abode is to inhale the air of sweetest swine. Hello, porks. An aesthetically pleasured pig is a clean and a happy pig.
Lovely boy. Look at his fierce tusk. Yeah, vicious.
What lovely babies. My goodness me, I bet these 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, Tamworth 8, will never be tempted to leave Larchill. Ah, lovely little boy. What a lovely little boy. And lovely babies. The goats too have their castellated abode, roaming the ramparts, making it ever more picturesque. Thanks to the de las Casas, the recreators and creators of Larchill, we are able most magically to see for ourselves the 18th century Arcadian vision of the Ferme Ornée in all its maiden beauty. Here, where the natural world interweaves with the wildest flights of architectural fancy, an all but forgotten element of the Romantic movement has been wondrously revived.